What does a grain of rice have to do with lie detection? Well, about 2,000 years ago in India, when they thought someone was lying, they would have them stick a grain of rice in their mouth, and if they could spit it out, that means that they were telling the truth, of course. If they couldn't spit it out, that meant that they were lying. The reasoning behind that is that they were so nervous about telling a lie and getting caught in that lie that their mouth and their throat would be dry, and therefore they couldn't spit out the rice. So obviously, we want to find if someone's lying to us. We've wanted to do that for 2,000 years. So I'm going to pose two questions to you right now. And I want you to think about the questions and see if you can come up with the correct answer at the end of this presentation. So the first question is, who do you think gets lied to the most? The second question is, what is the most common lie that both sexes tell? So be thinking about that, and we'll see if you come up with the correct answer. So let's look at why we lie. There's three main reasons. Robert Feldman, a psychologist at University of Massachusetts, said, and I quote, "It's tied in with self-esteem. We find that as soon as people feel that their self-esteem is threatened, they immediately begin to lie at higher levels." So the first reason is self-esteem. The second is maintaining social contacts. We don't want to insult or cause discord, so we will lie to keep those social contacts. The third is the top motivator and the most common lie, and that's the lies to avoid conflict. These are basically lies that you withhold information. You don't divulge some information that you could. So the next logical question is, can we detect when someone is lying, and would that really help us? Well, so far it has helped law enforcement, judges, lawyers, the CIA, the FBI, the US military, and the TSA. So let's look at some tried and tested techniques for lie detection. First of all, we have micro-expression. This is involuntary, and that's the key word here. It's involuntary. They're facial expressions that are unknowingly displayed, hiding an emotion from either yourself or from others. So these are going to be quick, concealed emotions. They're brief. They will appear and disappear on your face within a matter of seconds. So you really need to be looking for them. Micro-expressions are not culturally determined. They're biological. So this means that they're universal across all human cultures. So these involuntary movements include 44 facial muscles that are affected by 7 emotions. And these emotions are related to deception. So the first one is anger, and then fear, sadness, disgust, contempt, surprise, and happiness. So I need a volunteer to come up. Tom, if you'll come up. I want you to see if you can notice what type of picture he's looking at just by the facial expressions that he has. So this one, obviously we're glad that there was some glass in between the child and the thing that's wanting to eat her. Okay. This one, we have a child that says there can only be one. And he's trying to get rid of the other one. Okay, thanks. So we can tell that we just naturally have some reactions when we see certain things, and we can't really control these reactions. Okay, so the next thing that we need to look at is statement analysis. This is when you analyze a person's words, because words will betray you. Truth sometimes goes unnoticed. We have a habit of interpreting what someone is trying to say. In other words, we put words into their mouth that they never said. A good example of this is O.J. Simpson and his so-called suicide letter. It was read, and I quote, "First, everyone understand I had nothing to do with Nicole's murder. This was printed in newspapers, magazines, and read on television." But his actual words that he wrote were, "First, everyone understand nothing to do with Nicole's murder." He had crossed out the words "I had." So he meant to do that, but everyone inserted the words "I had." So there was 100 homicide calls made to 911, and they did a statement analysis on those to see if they could figure out if if the callers were liars. And the first thing they found out was the "huh" factor. So if they kept saying "huh" to all the questions, 91% were guilty, and only 9% of those were innocent. Then there was the answer a question with a question, and this always meant that you asked them a sensitive question, so it was a hot spot to look into further. Then there was the resistance to answer a question, and every time they showed resistance, this proved to be 100% guilty. And then there's the not answer a specific question. They would just answer it generally, but not specifically. This also ended up being that there was 100% that they were guilty. So let's bring it all together and build a foundation for being a human lie detector. First, you're going to develop a baseline. You're going to look at how they look and sound, behave, and act, and while they're not lying. So you're going to do this with a little bit of small talk, and it'll take about 10 minutes. Then when you get that baseline of how they act, you're going to look for deviations from this baseline. And you're going to look at 5 things as you're looking through this. The first is their verbal style. Truth flows, is spontaneous, so you're going to look for the hesitations, the ums and the ahs. Next, you're going to look at the face. The eyebrows show a lot of emotion, and disgust will show in the middle of the face. You're going to look for wrinkles around the eyes, because this shows emotion. And if they're smiling, it will take their entire face. It'll go clear up into their eyes and their eyebrows. If they're not really feeling the smile, it'll only be in their mouth. Then you're going to look at their body movements. Do they do shoulder shrugs, either one or both? Or are they looking around? Or are they starting to drink? Then you're going to look at their voice. What's the pitch? How fast? How slow? What's the volume? And then the last thing you're going to look at is their verbal content. They're going to use words like don't, won't, can't, did not. And you can also have them tell the story backwards. Have them tell it from the end to the beginning, because they've only practiced it one way, and it's hard for them to repeat that in the correct sequence. So remember that when you're lying, you have to use 3 different parts of your brain. But if you're just recalling it from memory, you only need 1 part of your brain. So in conclusion, let's go over those questions that I asked you at the beginning, and I want to see if you guys can come up with the answer. So what do you think the answer is to who gets lied to the most?
I think your boss at work gets
Your
lied to
boss?
the most.
Stephen, what do you think?
I think it might be your girlfriend that gets lied to the most.
Okay, the person that gets lied to the most is actually your mother. Okay, the next question. What is the most common lie that both sexes tell?
I think the most common lie that both tell are that they look good.
Okay, Stephen, do you have one?
I think the most common one is that they achieve something that they didn't.
The most common is nothing's wrong, I'm fine. All right, well, thanks for joining me in our discussion about being a human lie detector.